And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of GMAT Club's YouTube Debriefs. My name is Evan. For those of you who don't know me by that name, most of you should by this point. You hopefully know me by my forum name, Nightblade354. And folks, I get questions all the time as people watch these sessions. They say, Evan, you start off the same way every single time. What? No, everyone knows you. Wrong. According to this group of four that I'm interviewing here today, none of them knew me, which is significantly below the GMAT Club average. So that is why I introduce myself every single time. You know what? I can't help you guys that you don't know me. You're missing out. That's all I'm going to say. But for this lovely session, folks, we have a treat for you today. We are interviewing not one, not two, not three, four. We're interviewing four people. And when Naren, who is also a moderator in forum, brought this to my attention, he said, Evan, we've never done four with you before. How do you feel? I said, know what? My facilitation skills aren't that good. And he said, know what? You're doing it anyways. And here we sit. So, folks, as you probably know, this is going to be a session on Cambridge Judge. We have four students who are starting their first year there. And frankly, I'm super excited to have them. I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and we're going to go through their entire process, their applications, their interviews. I mean, how they screwed up, where they went right, where they went wrong. Everything is on the table. And I can say that as I'm monologuing because Sneha and I had a conversation yesterday. I was told there is no hold barred here, folks. She told me everybody here is single, so if you see somebody you like, maybe they look a little cute, send a message. They admitted that she'd been stalking me for a month. I mean, I'm okay with that. It happens. This is not my first rodeo. And she has also told me that, again, every panelist is willing to answer any question that you have. So at the end of this session, if we have time, please put your questions into the YouTube chat, and I will make sure to get them. But enough about me rambling here. It is time to hear from our lovely panelists. So, folks, please introduce yourselves. Tell us who you are, where you're from, some of your background, what your score was, who, what, where. We'll get to the when and the how later, but let's start with the who, where, and what. So let's start with the woman who's been stalking me for approximately 33 days. Sneha, go ahead.
Hi, Evan. Thank you for the lovely introduction.
Oh, my pleasure.
Hello, everyone. So I am Sneha. I am currently in Hyderabad, India, and I've spent the last 8 years working as an entrepreneur and also with multiple startups in India. And I've helped establish and set up multiple startups in India, such as Uber Eats, Oyo in hospitality, and also DotPay, which is a recent company that I worked with in fintech. So I think I have a vast experience in majority of the technological startups in India. And the prime reason why I chose Cambridge, the Judge Business School, for my MBA was for the similar reasons that I wanted to pursue my major or my business education in entrepreneurship, or some school that actually believes more in helping entrepreneurs do what they want to do. And also, to answer the question on the score, although we're talking with the GMAT Club, I've given my GRE and I scored a 322, and I've been I got an admit with the Judge Business School. So I'm just trying to give a perspective here that it's not always GMAT.
And we appreciate that. We don't discriminate. Again, I've taken the GMAT, I've taken the GRE, I've taken the LSAT. We're all friends here. I think Judge is very lucky to have you. I think I'm very lucky to have you always in my rearview mirror stalking me. I think everybody wins in this case. Jack, give us the who, the what, the where, and the how.
Yeah. Thank you, Evan. So my name is Jack Newton. I'm based out of New York and grew up in the area as well. So kind of a fake enemy to Evan being in Boston. But coming into Cambridge, so been working in the software consultancy space for the past year, more specifically within fintech and Web3. And prior to that, I've been in the consulting software space leading up and have been since college. So hoping to continue that path forward for technology, digital transformation while I'm in Cambridge, and then likely continue on with that career post graduation as well. And in terms of scores, so I took the GMAT and the GRE once, both. And I think that for the GRE, I got a 324. And I unfortunately don't remember for GMAT, but I think it was like around the same, at least in terms of like percentile breakdown.
Very nice, man. I'm being stalked by the wrong person.
I'll join her. Yeah. They have multiple stalkers.
Awesome. More the merrier.
Yeah, right.
Ms. Daisy, you are up next.
Okay, so I'm Miss Daisy and I'm from Kenya, Nairobi. I don't know how many of you have been to Africa. And I am coming into Cambridge. So my background is in civil engineering. I did that for 4 years, 2016 to, let's say, until the pandemic happened. And then after the pandemic happened, I was like more interested like in entrepreneurship and business school and all that. So I started my own like lifestyle online business just to understand how digital transformation works for businesses online. And my platform, I've been able to grow it to 80, I think 7,000 right now, people on Instagram, just to understand how to build a business on Instagram in just 2 years. And then going into Cambridge, what I'm particularly keen on is digital transformation. So I was very happy to hear Jack talk about that. And also I'm very keen on product management. So for example, myself trying to create products for my audience, that like there is an entire system that I have to go through to sort of understand what are their needs, how can I meet their needs, how can I give them a product in a way that it's able to meet their needs. So like for me, it's like my pre-MBA internship has been almost 2 years long, and it's been really fun. I've learned so much. My GRE score is not as high as the others. Mine was 312, but I think that the African average is generally lower because, you know, different factors come in there. I think you know all about them. And yes, I'm particularly excited to have this conversation here today.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And by the way, we here at GMAT Club, we don't measure people by their score. We do it the old-fashioned way. We measure by height. So don't worry about it.
No, I think that in both, I'm particularly short.
We'll measure them by something else, and we'll figure out somebody to be on. And last but not least, Miss Louisa.
Hi, guys. I'm Luisa. I'm from Colombia. I'm currently in Bogota. I spent about 10 years in New York. So, hey, Jack, we'll definitely be talking about that once we meet up in Cambridge. I worked in fashion, particularly in luxury e-commerce, and I was a jewelry buyer for nearly a decade. And I'm currently the jewelry director at a boutique showroom. So we work with brands to get them to retailers and connect them with international audiences. My score was 323, so I think pretty much on par with the other guys. And I did the GRE, sorry. And last but not least, why Cambridge? After spending pretty much a third of my life in the States, I really wanted to be in Europe, and I also wanted to be at a school that had a little bit more variety than just MBA students, so kind of getting enriched by their other perspectives as well. And the traditions from Cambridge really drew me in, and the size of the cohort. So I think it's going to be a wild ride.
I'm so happy to have all of you here today. And folks, those of you watching, just so you're aware, much like with every session I do, these are always agenda free. And what do I mean by that? I mean, nobody's paying these lovely folks to be here. Nobody's paying me to be here. They should, but they aren't. Meaning that we are not beholden to anybody or anything. What you always have on my programming is the truth. Every single time, nothing else. No biases. I will bash every expert from here to Timbuktu if I need to prove that point. I bash our sponsors all the time. This is the honest truth. These are real people. They're not actors. One's a stalker, but they're not actors. They are here to help you understand why you may want to consider judge and why you may not want to. So with that said, let's dive into some questions, shall we?
Yep.
Yep, for sure.
All right, for 50 points and the lead in today's show, who can tell me who the very first person was to sign the Declaration of Independence here in the United States? I want the first man.
I think, Jack, that one's for you.
I know, that's sad. I should know that, right? The first,
It's for you.
Is
Who
it?
was the first man of the founding fathers to sign the Declaration of Independence? Put pen to paper.
John Hancock.
John Hancock. Jack gets it. 50 points to Jack.
Oh my
I'll take
goodness.
The question for the American. Yeah.
Perks of being American, I fully admit there are plenty of them. And during these trivia sessions, which will be sprinkled in throughout just to make sure that everyone's paying attention, Jack, that will help you quite a bit. But with that said, to get a little serious here, I want to talk about sort of the application process and then talk about your interview process and lastly your career aspects or prospects. And from an application process, I want to know what was the first thing you did after you got your score? So you get this lovely score. Most of you are in the 90th plus percentile. What was the first thing you did once you understood that you finally had a score that was going to make you competitive with some of these programs, judge included? Who would like to take that question?
I think I can go first.
Stalker's up. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Down.
So I think the first thing I did was prepare my resume because I think by the time I had my score, I was already looking for a different job. So the kind of resume that I was preparing for my job interview versus the resume that I needed for my school was very different. The kind of points that I wanted to even put out there to sort of make anyone understand that what I exactly did or what value I added in a team was much different to a job application versus a school application. So I think it was a lot of work. The first thing that I did was prepare a school resume that I needed, which exactly showed what Sneha did in the last 6 to 8 years or what truly reflects her professional journey. So I think that was the first thing that I did. Followed by obviously the entire application process where you had to prepare for your essays, and it was very different to each school. But I think the first was my resume.
First was resume. All right. Who had different experience?
I did. I had a different experience. Myself applying for the MBA was, I think, a bit like a roundabout way because I was looking for a course that will help me get to the next level, right? So my background is in engineering, and all the management things that I'd learned up until that point were things that I was learning on the job. So I got to a place where I said, do I do an MSc or do I do an MBA? And I'd actually applied for several MScs. And then when it came to the MBAs, I actually got interested in the MBA when a friend posted something on WhatsApp and it had to do like with a MBA webinar. And I said, okay, let me join it. And then I joined the webinar and then I was like, this is really cool stuff. And it sounds like the thing that I want to do. And so I started like researching like all these different things about the MBAs. And as I was researching, I came across, I think, something called the QS tour. And this was back in 2020, like we're like right in the middle of the pandemic. And so we had like all these webinars happening. And I went to some of these webinars. I looked at like all the different schools that were there. But the one that particularly caught my eye was the Judge Cambridge MBA. And so I went to the website and looked at it. And I looked at their qualities and some of their values. So things like collaboration, innovation, trying to create an impact. And that is precisely what I was looking for. So for me, it was like, what do I need to do to get to this program? Because it was the only program that I actually considered when it came to MBAs. I didn't look at like other schools and said, oh, I'm going to apply to like all these other schools. It was like one hit, and just to make sure that I get in. So for me, it was, then I got like in touch with admissions and I was like, what do I need to do to get into the program? And then from there, I'd already done the IELTS, so thank God for that. Then they told me you need to do the GRE and then you need to do like all these other things. So for me, it was like I identified the school and I identified what I wanted to do, and then now I did the GRE. So when I was doing the GRE, I'd already started thinking about like the ACEs. I'd already started looking at how to make my CV and like all those things. So for me, it was like a straightforward motion. It wasn't like, oh, I have the GRE, so what do I do with the GRE? It was like, I want to get into this program. And so therefore, I want to do the GRE because this is the program that I want to get into.
Okay, so a bit of the reverse there. Jack, I saw your hand raised, so by all means. But first, I want to pull that up. I find that hysterical. And I think he's absolutely right.
Yeah, so funny enough, I would say I sort of had the opposite trajectory from Daisy. So when I started out in the application process, I sort of let the standardized testing take a bit more of a back seat. So I focused on continuing to execute at work, refining my CV, starting on the essays, and then I ended up taking, I think I mentioned this before, the GRE and the GMAT both just once. But to directly answer your question, because I think it was, what did you do right after taking the test? Well, once you were sort of satisfied with the score, I think that for most people applying, there's a lot of really strong candidates that are applying to these types of schools, Cambridge or otherwise. You really just kind of need to meet a threshold the majority of the time. There's sort of a generalized minimum that you need to meet, whether it be for the GMAT or the GRE, both. But more importantly, and one thing I think that they don't talk about too much is how you maybe need to overperform in one of the sections based upon your experience. So for example, and Daisy, I don't want to speak for you, but coming from an engineering background, maybe it was less important that she performed very well in the quant section because more than likely she already has that experience or, could pick up the types of maths that would be used while we're at the program. Whereas on the other hand, if she came from maybe more of a, humanities focused background and then didn't perform super well on GMAT, or excuse me, on the quant section, sorry, Daisy, if I'm kind of picking on you here, then maybe that's a bit more of like a red flag, you know what I mean? So I think that once I had taken the test and I had scored sufficiently with the subjective understanding of my background, that's when I said, all right, I'm good. I don't need to take it again and, focus on other parts of my application.
Very nice. And Louisa, how about you?
So for me, I had been slightly traumatized by the GRE because
preach, girl, preach.
I had started studying for it a few times during sort of my work trajectory in New York, but working in fashion is pretty much like a 24/7 kind of thing, and particularly in a startup, and particularly when you're as ambitious as I am. So I never really had the time to focus on it, and I felt like it was this giant hurdle to go through. So when I finally took it and got a score that I was satisfied with, it was just kind of, the gates are open, sort of, so to speak. I love writing personal statements for some bizarre reason. I also love editing them. And so that part for me was very fun. And it was more about figuring out what schools I really wanted to go to and why, but not like a generalized why, a specific why, and kind of doing the research and starting really to kind of envision myself at one of these places. And I have to say that Judge does a magnificent job at connecting with students in an individualized manner from the beginning of the process, at least in my experience. And I really appreciated that. They really put a name to you, and they like to do one-on-ones, and everything's just super personalized. Whereas I felt some of the other schools that I applied to, I was just kind of another number. So that was kind of my journey application wise.
Sneha mentioned yesterday that she felt very similarly, and I promise we're going to elaborate on almost everything all of you mentioned. So I'm very happy to hear that it was similar, but albeit somewhat different paths getting to this point in time. I want to know if any of you use consultants. If so, raise your hand to help you with these essays. Okay, just Louisa. That is okay. Louisa, I want to then focus on you. Would you recommend if you were to do it again, would you recommend using a consultant? Did you see that value add, or would you say, you know what, I had this, I really didn't need that extra security and didn't need to pay the extra money?
So I paid it for a specific reason. I wanted someone whose language was English. Sorry, their first language was English. And could really edit the structure and grammar of my writing. That was super important to me, and I'm a pretty good writer, I like to think, but when I'm writing my own stuff, it's really hard for me to self-edit. So I wanted someone to do that and to sort of kind of detangle my ideas, and just help me be as eloquent as possible. So from that standpoint, that was great. I think a lot of the people who use consultants tend to go deeper with their consultants, and they discuss a lot about what schools to apply to, spend a lot of time with the resume. I was kind of ahead of the curve on that front. Most of my siblings are on the consulting side of the world, so I'm pretty used to the format of CVs and so forth. So it was more just editing process for me, and I really appreciated that because it gave me the security to send out the very best essays I could have. But obviously that could have come in many forms. I'm just very grateful. I also became really good friends with my consultant, so it was just like an added bonus.
Oh, that's wonderful. And you know what? So, Sneha, I want to hear your perspective on this because you didn't raise your hand. You said no.
No,
I'm not. I don't want
I
it.
was feeling like it. I was trying to raise my hand.
Oh, you did use a consultant.
Yeah. No,
Okay,
I did
actually-
not. I did
okay,
not.
yes.
But I wanted to actually share my experience and what I think about it.
Yes,
because-
please. I want to hear why you didn't use a consultant.
I thought I could do it all by myself, and I was pretty overconfident. And if I look back a year ago, exactly right now, and what is it that I've done, I could have done differently, I think I would go with a consultant. I would definitely go with a consultant. And this is something that I've been suggesting everyone who's been reaching out to me so far, as to what my journey has been or how they have to go about this. Because I've spent sleepless nights wondering about what to write, how to edit my resume, which is the right school for me. And I've been talking to the same kind of people who are also confused in the same journey, and they are no better than where I am. So I think a professional consultant who already can evaluate where I stand, or at least set a perspective for me, was something that I lacked when I was applying. So if I were to give any advice to myself a year ago, I would definitely tell myself, stop being overconfident and just go and get a consultant. And there are a lot of merits to it, because they don't just analyze, or it's not about them writing an essay for you, or trying to portray what you are not. They're just trying to show the best parts of yourself, which probably you won't even realize that probably this is something that I did really well in my life. Because I think individually we try to always underplay what we've done, and we try to dismiss our merits. So I think a consultant usually gives a perspective that, no, this is great. So I think, yeah, definitely, if anyone really can pay for it and are fortunate enough to spend that money, I think, yeah, definitely just go for it.
I mean, and by the way, Sneha mentioned she spent so many sleepless nights, thinking about her essays. Yeah, it had nothing to do with stalking my Facebook profile or anything else for that matter. Nope, it was all those essays. Luisa, I saw your hand raised. By all means, please.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to add the other, kind of in the same vein of what Sneha was talking about. I think that some of the questions they're hard, right, for the essays. Like, name a situation that was difficult and how you sorted it out. I mean, I don't have a million of those off the top of my head, but talking with the consultant really helped me see where I was showcasing a strength that would really shine within an MBA background, particularly because I'm coming from a less traditional sort of professional career, right? So showcasing some analytical skills, communication, so on and so forth. And that really, really helped me kind of have someone to bounce ideas from, and just say, okay, maybe this is good or maybe this isn't great, because too, I think, and there's three women here, another, what Sneha has said, that we tend to be a little bit humble about our merits. That's something that is very much ingrained into our female brains, and it helps when someone says, okay, you're doing that again, and maybe don't. This isn't the time or place, and it's it's hard to kind of break free from those sort of learned behaviors, so to speak.
Yeah, Miss Daisy, by all means.
So I didn't hire a consultant, but coming from a non-traditional background, like I don't have like finance, like I barely knew anything about the MBA world. Like I shared earlier, what helped me is that this friend who posted about the webinar, she and her friends had started like a group. It's called the Lane Forum, and it's basically caters like for African young adults or young professionals who sort of want to get into the MBA route. And what they do is that they have like these webinars, and they show you how to like write the CV, like how to go about the finances, how to go about writing your essays. And the good thing is, for me, I was very diligent. Like I attended most of those sessions, and I also volunteered to sort of help them spread their message for a while. And just being in a forum or being in a place where there's people who've already done it before and they've already gone through the process makes it easier. So for example, myself, when it came to the essays, what really helped me was I read the book. I think it's called the Mba Game Plan. I don't know if you know about it. I read it, and it sort of helps you to understand this is how you should improve on some of your weaknesses. So for example, like Jack was saying earlier, if I'm weak in, let's say, verbal stuff, how do I sort of bring that up, right? And that is like through the essays. If I do the GRE like really well, or if I already have like a strong analytical background, right? So I think if someone wants to do the MBA and this is their first time and they don't know anything about it, it's wise to look for someone who's already done the process, because there is no need to reinvent the wheel, so to speak.
Thank you for that added commentary. Jack, you've been quiet. And I want to incorporate you, maybe not necessarily with this question, but for the one that's going to move us forward a little bit. How did you, again, without consulting help, decide what schools you were going to apply to?
Yeah, so I can actually kind of tie in answers to both indirectly.
By all means.
Yeah, so I also didn't go with a consultant. I think that retrospectively, I made the right choice not to go with one. However, I do recognize that if I had applied to more schools than I did, I likely would have gotten value out of hiring a consultant.
How many schools did you apply to there, Jackie?
Including Cambridge 3 altogether.
Oh, okay. So that is definitely maybe on the lower end of schools that people apply to.
Yeah, I think so. So tying up the answer to the first bit, I think that I would have gotten a lot of value out of a consultant had I applied to a lot more schools, because they would help me with the management process, understanding the difference between schools, how to kind of, tailor my application accordingly. But my decision to apply to where I did was really predicated on moving over to the UK. So, you always hear, and I'm sure that you're very familiar with this, Evan, but, everyone else on the line, we talked about this even during the admission cycle. A lot of times there's like 3 core reasons why people will get an MBA. It's like to change location, to change career, or to change industry, right? And my main driver was really the first. It was to move over to Europe, to grow my career in either continental Europe or within the UK or Ireland. And so that was my initial decision as to where I started sorting through the list. So I ended up applying to Cambridge, to Oxford, and to UCL, and then narrowed it down after beginning the application process to just Oxford and Cambridge, which is where I moved forward with the interview process. But all in all, I'll stop rambling. I think that things would have been very different had I applied to more the average number of schools, call it half a dozen or 10 or something like that. That would start to feel a little bit less manageable. And I think that it would have helped to have someone kind of shadow me and keep me on track and keep me realistic about the quality of my applications.
You guys don't need to apologize. This is your time. You can talk about whatever you want. You can go on and on and on.
It's apologies.
Bring out bring out these answers.
Yeah, I apologize to the ladies on the call for taking up a lot of time with that one. But
also, who else would like to share how they chose their schools? Daisy, I know you said that Cambridge Judge was your only choice. It was your number one choice. Sneha or Louisa, how did you guys create your school choice list?
Okay. It's actually very conflicting to what school I've chosen to what my school prep has really been, because when
I'm
I've
gonna love this
prepared
answer.
when I've prepared the list of schools that I really wanted to apply to, there was no school based out of UK or Europe, not even one school. And most of them were in the US. And we've had our chat earlier because I was pretty adamant about the fact that I really wanted a 2-year MBA. And the reason I wanted that, because I really wanted to enjoy the process of learning and also sort of make memories, make friends, and everything that I can do about it. So there was no school that I wanted to apply in the UK. And it turns out that in round two, I somehow decide that let me apply to judge, because I started reading about the school. I started reading about what curriculum they have to offer. And from the background that I come from, I somehow resonated with Cambridge, but I was still hoping it does not turn out in reality, because I was still not ready for a 1-year MBA. I was really hoping for them to reject me. And even after my interview, I was really hoping that the professor hated the interview and he really was very disgusted with my answers. But seems like he loved me. So I don't know. I really hoped not all of this not to work. But I think, yeah, different perspective. And that is when I started enjoying that. Okay, so this is what is going to work for me. And here are the reasons why I might enjoy the 1-year MBA. And that is when I started introspecting that, did I really want to study for 2 years? And the answer is no. I did not want to study for 2 years, because I really enjoy working. And I think even these 12 months without any work, without getting a paycheck, really, because I think it's a lot of work again that we'll be doing, but without a paycheck, the remaining 12 months that I look forward, I think it's very scary. So I really want to get back to work. And that, I think those are the pros of a 1-year MBA. And where people usually get scared that this is not the kind of intensive learning that we want. And the best part about judge was they clearly mention it, saying that it's all a very experiential learning. It's not bookish, it's not a bunch of exams, or it's not a bunch of courses that they try to put in front of you. It's all about projects. It's all about the kind of diversity that your cohort brings and what you want to make out of it. So I think eventually in the process, I started liking why I applied to the UK. But initially in my first list of schools, there was no UK or Europe. So yeah.
There we go, folks. So that isn't a resounding, just reason why you should go to Cambridge Judge. She hated the school, and yet she went there anyways. She had no desire to study in Europe, and she went there anyways. Wow. Louisa, do you want to share your experience?
Yeah.
We don't have to. I can hop to the next question if you'd like.
No, that's totally fine. So I started out with a very big list. It had about, I want to say, like 12 schools in both US and Europe. And then I started looking at acceptance deadlines. And I realized that they did not match at all. And I was starting to, I had already had my doubts about returning to the States.
You all hate America. I get it. I'll ask about that later. You guys hate the red, white, and blue. It's okay.
I don't actually. The red, white, and blue. I had to leave because of my visa finished. And it was very sad when I did leave. So coming back to that and then having to go through the immigration process once the MBA ended, it was a little terrifying. And then I was just looking for something. I did my undergrad in the States, so I wanted to do something completely different for this experience. So when I realized that the acceptance dates didn't match, I just went with Europe because that's kind of what was calling my name. So I nixed all of the US schools from my list. And then subsequently, I had the privilege that I got into all of the schools that I applied to, but Judge was the one I was excited the most from the beginning. Like I said, I think they do a great job connecting with students or prospective students. I really like my interviewer. He was very personable, very approachable. I just felt like there was this sort of sense of belonging from the get-go that really made it feel like the right choice. I, for example, did not feel that with Oxford whatsoever, which is interesting. Getting that rivalry started since now. But at any rate, I was just very excited to feel that that I already could belong, even if I hadn't gotten accepted. So when I did, it was a no-brainer for me.
Makes sense. All of you had wonderful reasons, which brings us to our next question. Let's see how well you actually know the school that you apparently love so much.
God.
True or false? Raise your hand if true. Keep your hand down if this is false. Pirates of the Caribbean, one of the films, was filmed on the campus of Cambridge. True or false? Hand up for true. Keep your hand down for false. I'm seeing no hands raised, so I assume all of you are saying this is a false statement. And all of you would be wrong, according to my moderator team, which I fully admit could be wrong, and they could be screwing me over right now on camera. They told me that Pirates of the Caribbean, one of the films, was partially filmed on the grounds of Cambridge.
What scenes, though?
I have no idea. I didn't invest any time looking into it because facts be damned. I'm running with the fun fact.
Go for it.
Until it's not a fun fact because it didn't exist. So if anybody wants to fact check me on that during this video and tell me whether that was true or not, whether I need to fire a couple of moderators on my team, let me know. But okay, no points given on that one. So we can move on to our next question, which is, did the order of your applications matter? And I ask this because I know some students look at their application process and they say, boy, that first application, boy, that was amateurish. But my last one, that could have gone into Harvard with that thing. Whereas other students say they sort of peak in the middle, and then by the end, they're like, I give up. I hate this. I want to burn down every application I see moving forward. How did the application order impact the quality or maybe even the decision-making of how you applied to these schools? Who would like to take that? And Miss Daisy, I know we haven't heard from you in a while. I promise I will incorporate you in the next question. I promise I'll spotlight you.
Okay.
So who would like to take that question about the order of applications?
I can go. Oh, go, Jack.
Jack, and then
Okay.
Louisa, you can go next.
Okay, so Louisa did mention, I believe it was Louisa, that the school application deadlines per round definitely vary, and that was probably like the first most like objective factor. So I think anybody that would be on this webinar is well aware that most full-time MBA programs have like the multiple rounds, and Cambridge might be somewhat unique in the sense that there are 5. Spot check me there. Where I think like most schools will have like 4 usually. But generally speaking, it's somewhat similar in the UK as it would be most other places in the world, whereby in the beginning, you probably have a higher likelihood of at least getting an interview. And then as the cohort starts to build and they, provide offers and people accept, you obviously have slimmer odds because there's just fewer vacancies. So by the time that you're getting to rounds 4 or 5, it's definitely a lot tougher. So I think that one thing that is very different than the undergraduate process is you can apply to most undergraduate schools, at least in the States, either like early decision or early action, which, to a certain extent has like, some binding to it. That doesn't exist within the MBA program, but if you apply to a school, round 1 or round 2, it's almost kind of quasi like you're prepping the school. Like, I took the time and got my application in early. Maybe you even make note of the fact that you're applying during this round because it's, your top choice of school. And I think that does carry some weight in terms of like the order that you choose to execute your applications. Maybe one is more important, thus you choose to get it out sooner because if you get the offer, you want to, accept the offer and thus matriculate. But I will say for all three of my applications, I ended up submitting the day of the deadline, and I don't think that necessarily had any negative impact. So obviously, like, the only standard is you can't be late, because they're definitely not going to accept that. I don't think even logistically you can submit late.
And Jack, I think you are absolutely right. If you show a commitment to a school that you said round one or early action that you wanted to be there and you got the application in, it does show an added level of excitement and commitment. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Louisa, what are your thoughts on this subject?
So I applied to all 5 schools in round 2 for the majority of them and round 1 for one of them. And that kind of basically put together all the dates and concentrated them into like a 2-week period, which was sort of end of October, early November. So I had kind of, everything going on at the same time. But I will say that once I got the first essays out of the way, which were judges' essays, I felt like I had kind of detangled my head enough to either use parts of that essay elsewhere to answer some of the questions that definitely overlap, or was ready to tackle on the different questions that were asked. I will say, in terms of just essay quantity, INSATs was very lengthy. And by the time I got to that one, because their deadline was the last one, it was early November, I was a little bit exhausted from kind of regurgitating why an MBA and why me and what my career path is like and what I want to do in the next 5 years and all these different things. But again, it was all very sort of concentrated within a 2-week period. And unlike Jack, I always feel like there's something that's going to go wrong with technology on the day off. So I tend to submit at least the day prior or something like that. If I was ready and had reviewed something over and over 100 times, then I'd rather just submit it than wait until the last minute, because that makes me a little bit nervous.
Definitely
And that
do
is
what
great
she did,
advice.
though. Yeah, not what I did. Yeah.
Do what Louisa did. Absolutely. Jack was rolling the dice. He's a gambler. But Sneha, did you have any thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I think I have thoughts on every question. So I think again, when I mentioned about my application process, where I had a bunch of schools that I wanted to apply in R1 versus the only school that I applied in R2. I think in R1, I was trying to fit in or sort of answer questions what the school really wanted to hear. So all the US schools that I've applied, I think I went mostly on the lines of, okay, so if I'm applying for school A, so what is it that they want to see out of Sneha? What is it that would probably interest them in wanting to talk to me or give me an interview? So I think it was very artificial. And through the process, when I eventually ended up in round 2, where I was applying to judge, this application has not been anything truer than what it can ever be, because right from the essay 1 to even simple questions that they've asked on the application, everything was very honest and came out of my heart. And I did not have to make up a story of what my post MBA goal had to be or what my career looked like 5 years later from where I'm standing now. So I think that also mattered to me, because I've matured in the application process. And by round 2, when I was applying to judge, I knew for sure as to what I exactly wanted, and not why I wanted to do an MBA, but what I exactly wanted to benefit out of the MBA. So I think to answer your question, yes, I did progress from where I was from day 1 to, day 90. And I've been a lot better.
And that makes sense. Again, from what I've seen in the past, where you tend to get better, you improve yourself. Not that you need to be improved, but
yeah.
And by the way, folks, we have an answer as to whether Pirates of the Caribbean was technically filmed at Cambridge. Thank you to somebody who actually looked that up for me. It's technically true. It was filmed on or at King's College of Cambridge, or King's College, Cambridge, which is a constituent college of the University of Cambridge.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say that technically is yes, but at the same time, could technically a trick question at the same time. So I'm going to give you guys another question to make up for it. And let's see, for 50 points and the lead, depending on Jack's answer here, what is the largest island in the world? Jack.
I think it is Greenland.
Jack for 50 more points. It is indeed Greenland. Lisa, was that going to be your answer?
Yeah.
Oh, so close. Don't worry. We have more to come. But Daisy, you've been so patient. You've been so quiet. I want to hear all your thoughts. Just let them out on the following question. What was the hardest and easiest parts of your application? I know some students thrive writing their personal statement, as Lisa does. Others like to focus on their resume, and they just, they can talk about themselves for hours. What was the easiest part for you? What was the hardest part for you? And subsequently, what did you do to help yourself once you applied? Did you reach out to alumni? Did you reach out to professors? Did you try and bribe the staff? I mean, so what was this? Once you knew it was Cambridge Judge, once you had sort of everything put together, tell us how that felt.
I think for me, the hardest part was writing the essays, right? Because I had written like essays to MSc schools before when I was applying to other things. But now when it came to the MBA, and when I sort of looked at the caliber of people who are applying to these schools, I sort of realized, okay, I have to actually be very serious about these essays. And also looking at like the level of investment that you make going to the MBA, you sort of have to really think if you want to go there or not, right? And like what you really want. And writing the essays for me took a couple of months because I sort of wrote them like in my head, and I was just like writing down like all the different points that I thought I was great at, and other areas where I was like, I think I need to sort of think about these different areas. I'd mentioned a book that I was using earlier, and like I sort of knew my weaknesses. So for example, as an engineer, you're very analytical. There is like things that come easy to you that don't come easy to other people. So I was like, in what areas are engineers weak, like when they come into the MBA? So I had to like really polish up my stories around, let's say, things like leadership and empathy, because there's a lot of teamwork, but then also like bringing a task from start to finish, right? Like as an individual, not as a team, because a lot of engineering is teamwork. So that was like difficult for me. And then there was also questions about like what was, I think, the hardest thing that you've ever had to go through. And I had to like really think about it and think, what was it and how did it change me and how did it shape me? And to sort of think about these essays in a logical way that if someone was to read them, they'd know me and they'd know my story. So the thing is, we stay with ourselves, right? Like you live with yourself, so you know your story and you think that your story is common to everyone, and you sort of take it for granted. And for me to look at myself with fresh eyes and to look at my essays with fresh eyes and say, okay, I think I can do better. I can rewrite this part. I can, change it. That was the hardest part, because ideally when you're writing those essays, if you're writing them honestly and you're writing them as best as you can, what you're doing is you're introspecting on your life. And basically the questions are asking you, where are you coming from? Where are you now? And where are you going? And they're asking, how can the school facilitate that for you? Right. And for me, that took a while, because I was like, do I really want to go in this direction? And what has been my story? What are the areas that I've learned things? What are the areas that I'm weak at? What are the areas that I'm strong at? It takes an incredible amount of self-honesty to write those essays in a way that if the other person is reading them, they sort of get to know you. So that for me was the hardest part, but also very enjoyable, because at the end, when you submit that essay, you feel like, okay, I gave it my best, and this is who I am, and this is who is ready to go for the MBA. It was the hardest, but also I think most rewarding, because it's like a gift that gives back to itself. The easiest part, I think, was connecting with alumni and connecting with like current students, because there's LinkedIn. And the good thing about LinkedIn, you just go in there and you type Cambridge MBA and you type the year that you want to talk, the students that you want to talk to, or the alumni that you want to talk to. And the good thing in my case that I found about both current students and the alumni from Cambridge is that they're very, very willing to help you. And they'll be like, okay, you're interested? Okay, I have 15 minutes for you, I have 20 minutes for you. That I don't think I reached out to anyone who told me I cannot help you, right? So for me, that was the easiest part. It was like, I actually felt good, because first the MBA admissions officers were very friendly and like they were very nice. I was like, okay, I get a good feeling about this school, right? But then that can be marketing. But then when you reach out to the alumni, and the alumni are also very willing to help you, you sort of understand, okay, there's something solid here. And it's good that they look at you as an individual, and they look at you and they take you seriously as well. So that for me was, I think, the lightest part of the entire thing. And also it felt like, okay, because sometimes you think that schools like Cambridge are like so high up that you can't reach those people. Just seeing how humble they were and how willing they were to help me reach my dreams was really light. And I think I was expecting it to be hard, and then it was light, and I was like, okay, this is nice, this is cool.
Sounds like you had an all-around fantastic experience. You had some personal therapy, you discovered who you are and what you are and where you're strong. You also had a wonderful experience with the alumni, and you figured out, again, this being your number one choice, that it was right fit for you. I mean, it actually sounds like you had a remarkable and a life-changing experience going through this. So kudos.
Yeah, it was, because I think before like I applied to Cambridge, I was looking at other schools, and I was speaking to this friend who's like at Darden, and he told me, don't look at those schools, you can do so much better, right? And I was like, okay, let me look at like the top 20 schools, right? I think it's the Financial Times sort of ranking. And when I was like looking at like all those different schools, the one that really caught my eye and the one that I was like, this feels right to me, was Cambridge. And I sort of went with that feeling, because sometimes you want to be very analytical and like all these things. For me, I was like, this is what feels right, and I'm gonna go with the flow. I think that's why it's easy for you to say that it was a remarkable experience for me.
Again, sounds incredible. I mean, I'm envious. I really am. You had a life-changing experience. And you just talked about going with your gut. The song More Than a Feeling comes to mind, which is a Boston band, I think. It's either the Cars or Boston. Facts be damned, it's Boston. I'm going with Boston. If someone wants to fact check me, go ahead. Facts be damned on this television program. But the rest of you, I'm sure, had similar experiences as Miss Daisy. By the way, I assume we're not going to make a joke about the film. I really want to, but we're not going to.
Please do. Driving Miss Daisy.
Nope, I'm trying to be good. I'm restraining myself here. Who else would like to share sort of the easiest and hardest parts, and potentially why, if I bribe somebody at Cambridge Judge, I'm not getting into the program? Luis, I saw your hands. So take it away.
For me, I want to say the hardest part was sort of fighting imposter syndrome of sorts. Because I do come from fashion, usually, kind of the reputation fashion has is like, oh, we hang out with pretty things and everything looks fabulous, and that's that. So kind of realizing that within my job, I had a lot of business acumen and had made a big impact in the company that I was at, and kind of writing that out in such a way that I could really portray myself as best as possible, and really realize why I want to get an MBA and what's going to help me with what it's bless you, what it's going to help me
Thank you.
with moving forward was a big thing that I kind of did prior to even working with a consultant or starting the GRE process. So just kind of realizing that, you know, I don't have to fit into the stereotype of fashionistas of the world, which again, it's a very hardcore industry, so stereotypes be damned. And then I would say the easiest part, you know, I've kind of mentioned this before, but it's mostly because I love writing, and I really like personal statements. I help other people edit theirs and consult for them, particularly undergrads. So it's something that kind of the language and what they're looking for from an admissions perspective is something that I understand fairly well. So once I got my head together, it was easier to put on paper. But I think getting the sort of introspection that Daisy did, I think I did it in a different level, but it's something that I recommend for everyone. And, you know, you do have to step up to the platform and be truthful, like speak from the heart, like Sneha said, and be able to argue this not just for the people in admissions, but for yourself, and say, okay, I want to do this MBA and I want to go to this school because of X, Y, and Z. And if you're not able to answer that comfortably, it's going to be a very hard process.
It sounds like you had your own hurdles to overcome. You know, you mentioned imposter syndrome. You also mentioned making sure that you highlight your own strengths and your accomplishments, given you know, sort of the societal pressures of maybe being a little more reserved. So it sounds like you too had a very eye-opening experience through this process, almost therapeutic as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a very sort of soul-searching process at the end of the day, right? That's kind of what those weird essay questions tackle. They make you wonder about things that we're not really talking about on a day-to-day basis. What's the hardest thing you've gone through? What's your, I don't know, favorite job, or what's your favorite career moment? Who knows? Like, they ask you all these different things, and you really have to think about it. And sometimes the answer for yourself is going to be one, and then the answer that you end up putting on paper is going to be another one, but they're somehow connected. And I think finding that thread to cohesively present yourself is something that is really remarkable once you find it, and once you're able to do that elevator pitch of who you are, then it feels like, okay, I'm on this road and this feels right, so I'm going to start kind of enjoying it.
Makes a lot of sense. By the way, I need to know, of everybody here, who's dressed the best? Who wore it best, since you are from the high world of fashion? Judge away.
Ivan.
Let's create chaos.
Ivan.
I want to say Sneha. I particularly like the way the color brightens her face.
I couldn't agree more. I think you're a very close second, though. And Miss Daisy, I think you're also very well dressed. Jack, you and
Daisy's
we are
definitely
what we are.
a close second for me. I like the way the color just makes sort of everyone kind of look
Thank
a little
you. Thank
depressed.
you.
Jack,
No, but I think we'll all agree it's Ivan, because I think he put extra effort in wearing the GMAT Club t-shirt, and he's also shipping some t-shirts. So maybe just let's give him some credit.
this is the official T-shirt of GMAT Club, but I don't know.
And you've officially promised us that you would give us the t-shirts. So
whoa! I promised I would look into it. Let's not make statements I can't back up here. But yes, you can buy t-shirts online. For this group, I will look into whether we can give you guys some. Sneha obviously obsessed with the idea, and only because I'm wearing it, she's obsessed with the idea. But I will make sure to dive into that. But Jack or Sneha, did you have any additional thoughts on easiest or hardest parts, or how you interact with alumni once you applied? Do either of you want to voice an opinion? Okay, Sneha, I see you. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I think I totally relate with what Daisy and Louisa mentioned about this whole process of self-reflection. And I think at a point right now, the MBA, as I already mentioned, is not just a degree for me, or it's not something that I want to obtain because it's the course of paths that I decided for it to be. But now at this point in the journey that I am, I think it's more about the person that I want to turn, and learn from all these amazing people that I'm going to meet. And it's been over 6 months that I already know or met people from this cohort, and I've already mentioned this to you yesterday as well when we were talking, that these are some of the nicest people I've met. And the sort of intimidation that you get along this entire journey and the process have somehow just disappeared entirely just because of the people that are around. So I think it's a lot about people. It's a lot about sort of reaching out. And again, if I look back and if I have to again suggest something to my early self, I would just say reach out, because I don't think I've done that enough, and I don't think I've reached out to a lot of people or spoken about my worries. So I think that is something that I would always encourage people right now to do, that, even if it is the most silliest question that you want to ask someone, just go ahead and do it. And the next thing that I would also want to talk about is, the whole process where when you try to answer these questions, I think you really try to underplay yourself, that I already mentioned again, and you try to introspect whether this is good enough. Can I mention this or not? And I think you have to reach out to people who really know you. It can be professional connections, it can be your family, it can be your friends. Just reach out to them, ask them that what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, really, what do you think? Because that worked out really well for me, because I reached out to some really close friends of mine. I reached out to my brother through the entire application process, and I asked him that, if you were to tell 2-3 words about Sneha, what would you actually say? And when they gave me a couple of insights about myself, I thought, this is great, because if not for this, I wouldn't have known what someone thought about me exactly. And this is what I can actually tell someone, that you can relate to it. So I think this is also a sort of experiential process that you go through, that definitely go talk to people, ask them about your strengths if you're not able to realize it, but never just feel that you're alone in the process, and do not get lost, because it's only evident that it will happen. So yeah, I think that's 2 suggestions I would like to give to people.
My adjective would be stalker, but I think we've covered this already. Jack, any thoughts, or would you like to move on to the next question, which I promise is going to make this again even more interesting conversation?
Yeah, my answer's super quick. So I'm aligned with all of them for sure. I would say most schools' application process, as you're approaching it, specifically the essays, it's going to be why an MBA, why from this school, and then everything supplemental. I would definitely recommend focusing on question 1. Making sure that your story is super straight about why you're getting it, and why now, why not a year ago, and why not in 5 years. And even if the truthful answer seems kind of like trivial or seems kind of stupid, I want to break from working, I want to make more money, I want to go live in a cool country, whatever, let that be the case, but supplement it with like the right background, the right information, and kind of like sell yourself. I think that's the most important thing. And then the only other thing that I'll add that's kind of specific to Cambridge is this is reflected or manifest in not only just your essays. So as part of the Cambridge and Oxford process, at least, you have to interview with professors as part of the process. And so long as your why MBA, not even why Cambridge or Oxford, but why MBA story kind of translates from the essays into that interview, I think that that's really important, because they don't care if you just hit the marks in terms of numbers, or you worked at X company, or you're a prince or a princess. They want to know why MBA, and I think that that's important for all 4 of us and other folks that are getting MBAs too.
So it doesn't help that I'm a princess?
Wow. Not yet. No.
Princess Evan, we are sorry, but you're gonna make the cut.
That hurts. I was really banking on that.
Maybe in life after school, but not forgetting them.
Wow. All right. So, by the way, we're already over an hour here. I mean, just so Sneha came to me yesterday and was kind of concerned, like, are we only going to talk for 20 minutes? And I kind of laughed. Like, we got 20 questions and 4 people. This is going to go 2 hours. I was kind of kidding. And realistically, no, we're going to go 2 hours here. So if anybody's watching now is like, I want to blow my brains out, probably best to end it now because it's only going to get worse. If anyone's actually continuing to be interested, we're now going to hit the interview part of this interview, an interview within an interview. It's like Inception, so many layers. And then we're going to go to the career aspects after that. So for those of you who are sitting here saying, I want to just end this because I don't want to waste my Saturday, it's okay. This is recorded. You get to see all my hysterical antics later. So please go to bed. It's okay. But my next question, as I teased, is about interviewing. And my first question is, you applied. Congratulations. You got the essays in. You got the resume is looking good. You hit submit. You paid the bill that was attached to it, which rips all of our hearts out. How'd you handle that period of time where you're sitting there saying, okay, no, I haven't heard back yet. No, still haven't heard back yet. Okay, I know 3 days from now is the day. Now, how did all of you handle the pressure of knowing when those deadlines were to say, okay, if I don't hear back, it's okay? Or when I do hear back, lighting off fireworks? What was that process like for everybody involved?
I mean, it's never going to be fun just patiently waiting for an email.
So I guess a better question would be how you handled the stress and pressure of it. What did you do to distract yourself from it?
Eat a lot of
exercise.
Wait, I heard multiple answers. Lisa, what was yours?
Oh, I just did a lot of exercise.
That's awesome. Same, girl, same.
Yeah, that's pretty much that. And I do have to say that because I had applied to round 1 of ESA, they were very quick to respond. And then, so that kind of gave me a little bit of confidence. And then I also have to say Cambridge was quick too. They say like 3 weeks, but at least in my case, it was less than that. And, I think you're just kind of waiting around. But in my case, I was just like, okay, the dice are rolled or the cards are on the table, whatever the saying is. There's nothing else I can do but do something else.
Lisa, I was a stick figure before this process started. I really was. Now I'm looking like Schwarzenegger. It's a stressful time.
It is.
It really is. Sneha, what did you do?
I think I ate a lot. I really ate a lot.
I love it. What'd you eat? Are we talking like cake and ice cream and sort of candy, or were you like?
Yeah.
Is it more like
hate
pizza?
Sugar. I hate sugar. I hate desserts. But I think that's what I junked on most of the waiting period, and I'm still doing it because the waiting is still not over till I get there. So I think it's never over. So I think the entire MBA process is all about waiting, and it teaches you how patient you have to be, and probably learn some meditation and do some yoga.
Wait, did you say you ate or hate sugar?
Ate.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, like, wait, you hate sugar? My God.
Yeah, I hate sugar, but I still ate it.
Oh, okay. That's fair. That's fair. Miss Daisy, what about you? How did you handle the pressure knowing you only had one school? Like, this was it.
I think for me, I handled the pressure before I submitted it, right? Because after you submit, what else can you really do? It's
sugar.
done. Not sugar, no. No, I think the best way that I did was I had these months that I, was preparing the essay and like all these things. And I was like, this is my best chance to do anything. So the pressure for me was in that period of time. And then after I submitted, of course, there's only 2 answers that you're going to get. It's either yes or no, right? And even when you get the yes, there is the interview afterwards. So the process really isn't over. Like, you have to skip a number of loops before you get to a place where you say, okay, I can breathe. So for me, the pressure that I had was before. And then after I submitted it, I said, okay, whatever happens, I'm going to take it as it comes, right? One of my favorite saying is, what will happen will happen. We'll meet it when it does. So
that sounds healthier than, again, eating a cake every day. Jack, what about you, buddy? the American style. Let's hear that you went to Five
McDonald's.
Guys or
Yeah, right.
Shake
Yeah,
Shack
some
every
fast
day.
food.
Yeah, right.
See,
I mean, aside from that,
stop. I'm not. We're gonna talk after this about. Yeah. Anyway. Jack.
no,
Go
aside from gorging my face, it's tough advice to follow, but I totally agree with Daisy. Like, once you submit, you kind of just need to step away, because otherwise you'll drive yourself crazy. Especially if you've applied to fewer schools, it can get tough because it feels like there's so much more weight in, those buckets. But indirectly, this is a bit of a tangent, but kind of like a piece of advice that comes about from like that waiting period. And I'd be interested to know if you ladies would agree with this. So after you initially submit and then you get an offer to interview, there's usually like a little bit of a grace period. I think that I ended up, like, after getting that offer, jumping in on like the first slot with the professor with whom I interviewed. But a quick tip would be, don't over prepare for that interview, because they all, they being the admissions committee, I'll tell you, like, be honest, enjoy yourself. It's a casual conversation. And I can only speak for myself, but I thought that it was BS, that they were lying through their teeth. And I wanted to know everything about this professor, if he had kids, his birthday, you name it. But at the end of the day, the conversation's really just about reiterating that story of, why MBA, why Cambridge. But it's also truthfully to strike up a relationship. Like, you're going to be their student for this next year, or, minimum probably a given class. So they want to like you, they want to ensure that you're engaging and you ask questions and you're interested. So that's just like a little supplemental piece of advice. Definitely find out who they are, figure out what they teach, think about some talking points about, how that relates to their given career, the professors, but you don't need to know their kids' names. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, do not talk.
Yeah, don't say that if you look it up.
Maybe I can just add on to what Jack has said about the interviews. For me, I think that the waiting for the response was, I think, easier than it was preparing for the interview, right? Because you look up the professor, and the professors at Cambridge have like pages and pages of things that they've done, and it's like, oh my goodness, what can I tell this person? And I was tempted to over prepare, but then I'd spoken to alumni and they were like, it's an easy conversation. It's like 30 minutes and they just want to know that who you said you are in the essays is who you are in person. So I'd prepared and I was formal and everything else. And then I get into the Skype interview and the professor was completely casual and relaxed and all that. And it sort of feels like, okay, is there a trick here, or, like sort of what's going on? But you sort of like have like a really easy conversation, and they're genuinely curious just to get to know you and to understand why do you genuinely want to do the MBA. What I can add on to what Jack has said is, at the end of the interview, they generally ask you, do you have a question to ask? And that is the best time to ask either something about the school, about how they teach, or maybe something along the lines of what the professor or the faculty member is doing, because then it shows that you're actually interested, because one of the values of Cambridge is collaboration, right? So you cannot say you don't have a question and you are there for collaboration, right? So that is, I think, a tip that a lot of people who get interviews need to sort of have at the back of their mind. Research the person, understand what questions you'd like to ask, because it shows you're truly involved and interested in the program.
Yeah,
Can I actually add something really quick to that? Sorry to cut you off, Lisa, if you were going to go too. Off of what Daisy just said, this is a really good point. At the end, obviously ask a question, right? It's very similar to like work interviews too. If you don't ask anything, that's the worst thing that you can do. But I would also say that is the time at which you can kind of flex the research that you've done. So if you have a professor that wrote some really cool paper, or they're working on this bit of research, or they recently transferred departments from one faculty to the other, that's the time to employ those types of or that type of knowledge for sure. Generally keep it about yourself, but then for that question, impress them with the fact that you're talking about, you've done your research and your due diligence, and well, so long as you can speak to it, right? You don't want to bring up something that's, above your pay grade. But I would say that helped me too. You don't want to ask a question like, what's your favorite thing about judge business? They get that all the time.
No, yeah.
I think
that's actually what I did. Sorry, Lisa.
No,
Just
go ahead. I was gonna say,
Lisa, you're next, I promise.
that's like exactly what I did, because the professor that I was given had like a lot of research and is like a public figure and all that. So I noted that he had like one particular thing that was connected to his homeland that he kept talking about over and over again. And that's what I asked. And he was very impressed. He was like, wow, how did you? And I was like, I did, read a little bit on you. And I think that is one of the things that sort of made him think, okay, this is a person that we'd like to have in the program. Sorry, Louisa, you can continue.
No, it's totally fine. I was gonna say that a question that I usually ask in terms of work interviews or some of the application interviews was what made them choose Judge as a place to teach. Obviously, some are gonna say like their research was there, so it's just like kind of the path to go to, but it's a way for them to explain what it is that they actually like about Judge without asking up front, what's your favorite thing about the school, and that's what I did with my interviewer, and he said something that really kind of echoed the feeling that we've talked about, Judge being a really tight community. And he said, I spend time with the students, and I get to learn about them, learn not just their name and faces or whatever, but really see them as people and connect with them. And it's been incredible to be part of such a diverse community. And I was like, great, that kind of ties in with the rest of the stuff the school puts out, which again could just be marketing, but once you start seeing it everywhere, you really see that it's the philosophy that they live through. So yeah, I just kind of rounding up what everybody said, definitely ask questions. And some of them can be kind of like your back pocket questions, but as long as you've been engaging and sort of authentic enough throughout the rest of the interview, I think that's having a balance of those will be fine.
3 months from now, when every single person during an interview, when they say, do you have any questions? And every single person asks, why did you decide to teach here over other institutions? Make sure to point them back to this video to say, yep, that was us. Blame GMAC Club.
I promise I have one other thing to add.
By all means.
Yeah, it's off of what Louisa added. I would also say, if you can, ask a question that's going to lead to some back and forth. So if you ask a question that's kind of rhetorical and it's just like a straight up answer, and the professor's met their mark by he or she having addressed it, it's not going to extend the conversation. So for example, I'll even tell you the question that I asked. It was kind of like a little bit even pushy, right? It wasn't, very sugar-coated. I said, what's an area of research within the business school that you think is underfunded or doesn't get enough attention? And you could imagine, like, that's kind of contentious, but my professor loved it because I think, it's a job for him too, right? He's a professor. He has a Monday through Friday. And I think that was thought-provoking because he said, well, with the time that we're in post-pandemic, I think that X deserves a lot more attention. And then that allowed me to ask supplemental questions and go back and forth. And I'm not saying that's what got me in, but I'm saying it just kind of, helped to fortify this idea that you're just a thinker. You just like to learn and ask questions and soak it all kind of up like a sponge.
Totally, and totally fine to be contentious too. I even went, I think, a little bit further than you, and I asked, what do you think about the employment prospects post-Judge, even though it's, ranked a little bit lower in the list than the top business schools? And his answer was, that within Judge, there's this sort of Silicon Valley of Europe, and there's a lot of companies and startups that are already there. So there's definitely ways to start connecting, and obviously the career service people do a wonderful job, and so on and so forth. But I think being aware of the position of the school and also what areas could be improved, which is, I guess, the sort of opposite way of phrasing what Jack just said, is an interesting way to get them kind of back on their feet, right? Because I'm sure there's a point where they go a little bit automatic in an interview, and this is a way to kind of jolt them back and be like, okay, yeah, I can think outside the box too.
You guys went really deep on that question. I'm not gonna lie. Wasn't expecting that type of back and forth, but this is good. Again, this is why I love doing these types of events. You guys talk, you're clearly collaborative, you're clearly comfortable with each other, and you will laugh this back and forth. I can sit back and do nothing. It's perfect. It really
I don't know why.
big.
I don't know why, but I think this interview question is very interesting because it brought to my mind something that I saw, I think yesterday on LinkedIn, that somebody was saying, usually when you're applying for a job or when you're going for an interview, in the first phase of the interview, the person who's asking you a question is the one who has like sort of the power, right? Because at that time is like you're the person who needs the job, right? And then the person who was writing this thing said how to change it is at the end for you to start to evaluate them as well, right? Like evaluate them and think, do I actually want to work for this company? So you can ask questions like, what are their values, and like how, let's say, does that particular role work with other people, and like all those other sorts of things. So basically it's first they evaluate you and then you evaluate them and sort of see, do I want to be with these people or not? Because you're going to spend your time there as well. Yes.
That makes a lot of sense. So let me ask. Oh, but by all means, Sneha, yes, 2 hands. Go ahead. Yeah, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Because I cannot not add anything in this question. So I think we covered a lot about what to ask and we covered a lot about what to prepare. But I think for me and for a lot of students who are applying, I think one thing we don't really focus is we prepare on what our essays are. We try to talk about a lot about our work, but I think we also have to think a little more about our failures, because I think my entire interview has been only and only about where I failed, why I failed, and what could I have done better. And that is not something I prepared. And the 1 hour of interview that I had was completely raw, candid, which is why I thought I messed it up. But I think it also appealed the professor because I was talking very true. And when I did not know, I told him that, sorry, I don't know how to answer this. So, which is not something that you think you would want to say in a school interview as such. But I think it's okay to be yourself and just say or accept that you do not know something. And this is why you want to learn, or this is why you're even wanting to go there. So I think it's very, very important to learn about your failures and address them individually, because I think that is also going to be a very interesting question in your interviews.
Okay.
Awesome. No, by all means, please.
He's about to throw us out. Why do I think he's like?
No. Again, I am here to make sure that we don't have a lull. So when I hear pause, I'm like, do I move on now? But no, go ahead, Daisy. It's all yours.
So to wrap up, like with what Sneha said, I think also what matters is presentation, right? Like how you show up for the interview, right? I think they also want to see, are you who you say you are? So if you say you're a team leader or confident or a good communicator, how your communication skills, like when having that conversation, and how your presentation skills, like how do you, present yourself, show up, like are you gloomy, are you withdrawn, are you like all those things? So all those things also matter. Sometimes they do this in person. For me, they did it virtually, and with virtual connections it's really difficult to bring out the full person because they don't see you. And so you have that short period of time and you just have like, you're showing half your, like half your body, like half. And so what you really have to do is show up and really, show them that they made the right choice. How you speak, how you ask questions, how you respond, your communication skills, like it really matters. It's not just that you prepared so much, but you're not able to articulate it in a way that shows you're the right candidate.
All the above makes sense. Am I safe to go now?
Yes.
Just to make sure. Everyone said their piece. We're good.
Yeah.
Yay. Obviously, I'm kidding. Again, I love the conversation. The fact, again, go down every rabbit hole you can imagine. I mean, we took out a couple of questions I had because you guys just kept going forward and kept moving the conversation forward. Awesome. Again, if I sit here and shut up for the next 40 minutes and you guys keep going,
we can go on. Yeah.
No complaints from me.
You know what that means? Do you know what that means? It means Sneha, Louisa, and
I'll be
myself.
the moderator.
We get 50 points each, and then Jack has 100, right? So it's...
Jack has 100 right now. The next question will be coming up after this. You know what? Fine. We'll since we've brought it up, we'll do the next trivia question. So Jack is in the lead for 50 additional points. I doubt Jack will get this one. Frankly, I doubt anybody will get it. So
Jack,
I'm gonna
mute
go
yourself.
closest answer wins. Tell me the diameter of the Earth in kilometers.
What?
We don't
I have
care.
to Google.
Who?
I have to Google. Can I Google?
No Googling. No, this is trivia. It's random.
Jack is thinking about it. Please mute Jack.
I am taking the closest answer, so everyone better throw in an answer here.
I'd rather not say anything.
12,000 kilometers.
So we have 10,000 kilometers from Miss Daisy.
12.
12,000 kilometers from Miss Daisy. Okay, Sneha, you.
Pass.
I think.
No.
Oh,
Go,
You
Jack.
think?
I think that Daisy's about right. Maybe a little low. So I'm gonna say like 15.
So 15 for Jack, 12 for Daisy. Sneha.
9,000.
9,000 for Sneha and Miss Louisa. In kilometers, please.
14,500.
Miss
Price is
Daisy
Right rules.
is the closest.
Yay!
Jack, you were in the ballpark to a certain extent. She was a little low. It is 12,742 kilometers. 50 points for Miss Daisy.
Yay!
Ivan, you did not tell me of this trivia. You should have.
For some reason, for some reason, I think Jack knows how to play these trivias. How many trivias do you play, like on average or per year?
These days, not much, but prior, yeah. I like
He
it.
seems to have a lot of experience.
Sneha, you wanted a fun, engaging experience that wasn't dull. Why was I going to give away all the secrets in our call yesterday?
Right. No, I sent Evan the trivia questions. So I was prepared.
Jack.
Oh yeah, that could be possible.
So, Sneha, I'm sorry I'm not letting you win. I can't let my stalker win Wait, you're stalking me. Why weren't you looking through the window while I was putting these together? You were stalking me at the wrong time. But so currently we have Jack at 100 points, Daisy at 50 points. We have a couple more questions for trivia, but we also have a few more questions for this interview. So let's jump back into that, which is you interviewed. It's all done.
Yeah.
What did you do post-interview, if anything? Did you engage with the school? Did you talk to adcoms? Did you re-engage alumni? Did you, again, try to slip $100 bill or 100 euros? I don't know what they call it over there. So I'll say, did you try and slip something under a door? Did you try and Venmo somebody something? Or was this just, you know what? Washing my hands. I've done all I can do.
I wrote a thank you email post the interview to my interviewer. So I figured out what his email address was. Some were easier to find than others. And then just, the classic sort of thank you. I really enjoy talking about XYZ, particularly excited about this that you mentioned, kind of going back to a point of the conversation. And then, hopefully we'll meet in Cambridge in the near future. Did not get, actually, I did get a reply from one of those emails from a different school, but the ones in the UK did not respond. But I do think that is proper etiquette. I don't know if it is in Europe, but I'm still very much Americanized in that sense. So I err on that side.
And if I may follow up and lend my 2 cents here, you brought up two amazing points I don't think people consider enough. One, always send thank you notes. Always, always, always. I spoke, again, having had connections in the business world for a while now, I spoke to an adcom who literally had on her wait list had a section that said, did they send me a thank you note? Yes or no. Was it a good thank you note? Yes or no. That helped students get in and kick students off the wait list, or maybe got them off it altogether. Send thank you notes. The other thing to realize, if they don't respond, it doesn't mean they hate you, and it doesn't mean you're not getting in. It simply means they didn't want to respond or they were too busy. So two excellent, excellent points. Thank you, Louisa. Who else wants to chime in here?
I can go.
Yes, Jack, go.
So totally agree. I think sending a thank you note to the people or person with whom you interview is like bare minimum. For some schools, I think it's a box you're checking. For some schools, they'll actually understand what you're asking, or, did you have any errors in your response? I can't really speak to that. I'm surprised to hear, Louisa, you even heard back from any schools. I think you're in the minority. Most people, you're just not even going to get a response, and that's totally fine. The only thing that I can kind of supplement, though, is definitely practice patience. I think that is difficult for a lot of Americans, I'll say. And I think it is almost in and of itself a test. If you're reaching out to AdCom a bunch after you do your interview process, it can be viewed as a negative if you're overly desperate, or you're trying to work over someone's head and going out to multiple people or something like that. And one thing I think is interesting, and then I'll pass the mic, is Louisa said after the interview process, it was quite quick. For me, it wasn't actually quite quick. I had to wait, I think, probably at least a week before getting the formal offer. But I remember connecting with an alum who said that, sometimes it's just about the way they reach out geographically. You might be considered for a scholarship at this time. Maybe your professor's on vacation, the professor whom you interviewed, right? There could be a myriad of reasons. But regardless, don't play doomsday, just be patient. And aside from that thank you note afterward, don't reach out again. Let them do their jobs.
I will say that, sorry, I promise I'll let the rest of you go. But I will say that this was a point where having a consultant was actually really valuable for me, because when I finished the interviews for both Cambridge and Oxford, I think I was reacting to the sort of very British professor kind of demeanor that I got from the two interviewers I had, and I'm Latin. I'm also very expressive, and they were just very sort of rigid, for the lack of a better word. So I thought I had messed up both interviews completely, and got really in my head because first of all, one of them, the judge interviewer asked me what my idea of a leader was, and I said Lauren Santo Domingo, who's the founder of Mode Operandi, where I worked for 10 years. And she also happened to write my letter of recommendation, which he apparently had like right in front of him. So I didn't know if he felt like that I was being facetious or something, but I think I ended up answering very truthfully, and I do admire Lauren very much so. And then in terms of Oxford, they were kind of quizzing me about, why Oxford, and I just said what I thought was true: diverse, prestigious school, so on and so forth, and a smaller cohort. And he's like, well, you could say that about any MBA. And I was like, well, no, and kind of had to pivot and get a little bit more specific. But when I kind of finished both interviews, started freaking out, I went back to my consultant and just kind of debriefed. And she was like, I think you're just being doomsday, kind of, as Jack was saying, and you just need to relax. I think you'll be fine. That day, I definitely ate a lot of chocolate and just kind of hid in my bed and thought, oh, the world is over. And it turned out to be fine. But I think having someone to turn to at that point to hear you out if you're freaking out is helpful.
Wait, yeah. This is important. What kind of chocolate?
Kinder Bueno.
Ooh, that's
Kinder
a
Bueno.
good chocolate.
It's
Yeah,
very good. It's very addicting.
Yeah, off of that too, I will say expect that they'll push back on you. You know, if they ask a difficult question or if they point out a negative of your collective application, I would actually say it's a good thing. It means that you're worth the time. They want to figure out what the nature of that negative is, you know, how much is it going to potentially impact you. If they already know they're not going to extend an offer, why waste the time? So if you get a difficult question like that, just relax, take your time and think about the answer that you want to supplement and allow it to almost be like a catalyst to continue the conversation, not a, oh, I'm about to get my hand slapped or, you know, marked down for my answer.
Makes sense. Sneha, Miss Daisy, anything to add?
Yeah, so I think I would obviously like to second to both Jack and Louisa. So, firstly, be grateful, thank everyone that who's been a part of this process. Be very patient. It can be very tiring, but you have to be. And the third thing is do not check on GMAT Club for other students posting about when they've heard back for results because it can be extremely frustrating. So I think just give yourself that break. Don't panic because it's okay that someone heard back sooner than you did, and there are deadlines for a reason. So do not panic. Do not reach out in that mode of panic state. So yeah, because I did that. I did that all of my round ones where I was constantly checking on GMAT Club if someone posted about it, if someone's talking about it, if someone heard back something about the school, which is great piece of information on a great website, but a lot of stress and anxiety for students. So don't do it.
Oh, I actually agree with you. So, see
So-
how unbiased the guy who helps run GMAT Club is saying stay away from GMAT Club. Folks, we are so agenda free, it's not even funny. But Miss Daisy, how about your thoughts?
So for me, post interview, funnily enough, I didn't send like an email or anything because I was so scared that if I send them something, they will think that I'm pushing it, right? As like they might think, okay, I'm trying to sort of wiggle my way into the MBA. And I was like, okay, let him do with the interview what he wants to. And because first I don't know the British culture, right? I don't know how they would take it. I don't know if they think I was being pushy or something like that. So I said, okay, I've done the interview. I leave it at that. The other thing that I did to decompress, because now after they give you the offer after they give you the interview and then do the interview, the stakes are a bit higher than they were before, right? So for me, this was the part where I actually had to practice patience. And I did this by talking to my brother, talking to my mom, exercising a little bit, just getting that stress out of like the system, because it's very stressful. Because once you do the interview, you're like really close. The next thing is, right, they're going to give you the offer or not, right? But if it was earlier and then you didn't get the interview, you'll be like, okay, maybe the essays were not good and all that. But now the essays are good. They think you're worth the interview, and then you've done the interview, and then you're like, I hope the gentleman likes me, or I hope the professor who was sent likes you, right? Like then it becomes a thing of like another person judging you, and it's like a direct thing, and like you can put a face to the person who's making the decision. So for me, that bit of decompressing was useful. Like these are things you don't know you need to do, like in the process, because it's a very emotional, like up and down sort of process. And I found that having the support of my loved ones was really, really important in the period of waiting for the result.
Having a support network is huge. I think that should be one of the main takeaways from this session is be honest with yourself, overcome those mental hurdles. If you have any, have this be a therapeutic experience for you, but also leverage those around you the best you can. Don't go into it by yourself, because that's going down, in my view, a path of disaster. Mm. So again, a lot of great content so far. I'm loving it. Does anyone have anything to add, or shall we move on to our next question? Awesome. By the way, so we have 5 questions left. 2 of them are the general questions, like anything we missed, and what would you tell your past self? So we technically have like 3 real content questions left, and then 2 wrap-up questions. So we're almost there. How you guys feeling?
Good.
Great.
Awesome. This has been a marathon. I am not going to lie. Before we do that, though, I think it's time for more trivia.
Mm-hmm.
And for 50 additional points,
Go,
who
Jack.
can tell me what the largest ocean in the world is? Jack?
Indian Ocean.
It is. No, it's the Pacific.
It is the Pacific. Jack for 50 more points.
I was rooting for our ocean. Doesn't matter.
It was the Pacific. So wait, how many more trivia questions did I write out here?
0.
I said I was right about Jack, right? Like Jack has done this. Like you need to mute his mic so that the other ladies.
So I have one more.
Don't mute your mic. Come on.
I think it's a fair question for everybody involved. It'll only be worth like 25 points because it's kind of an easy one. So we'll get to that one at the end, and then we can tally the scores. But my question to all of you, continuing on the interview, is, and we've talked about it a little bit. Each of you have sort of told me why you chose Judge, but I just want to give everybody another chance to explain why they felt Judge was the best fit for them, and why it was the best school for them given their situation. So by all means, you can elaborate for as long as you want on this, but who would like to go?
Me, so that they don't say, so that I don't hear what they have to say, and then I have to. So first of all, like I said, when I looked at their website and I interacted with the admissions members, I felt first a warmth that sort of attracted me to the school. So first, it was the gut instinct. And then second, it was just looking at their values and seeing collaboration and seeing that they value innovation. They want to also make an impact. It's not just, we want you to, I don't know, make the most amount of money. It was like they want you to also make an impact. And if I remember correctly, I saw one of the videos of the previous dean, and he was saying how they want to create people who go out into the world and they sort of have an impact on the societies that they're in and create sustainable businesses. And so that for me was like, it got like really close to my heart. And then I also looked at the like curriculum and the things that they were learning, and all of them felt practical, and they felt like it was something that I could want to do for my future self, right? Like it felt like I don't think I'll waste time going through like all these different things. And then the other important thing was like it was a 1-year MBA, right? So at my age, I don't know how old the others are. I'm not very old, but I don't have the.
You're not saying old. Yes, we understand.
I felt like I don't have the liberty to be at school for 2 years, because it's such a long time, and the world is changing a lot. And I think the best way to learn business is actually to do business. So for me, I just wanted to get the principles of what business is about, and then go out and iterate and like do all those other things. Because if you have the principles right, then you can do business, right? So that is one of like the other things that attracted me. And then also I just like, I'm an old soul. I like tradition, and I liked the tradition of Cambridge. I liked like how they have like all these college systems and like all those different things. It was just really attractive to me. It was like, I want to do this. And I want to do this as an adult, where I get to experience the things like in a much more a deeper way and a deeper level. So there was the college part, right? And then there was the school part, and like also, so this and this merged with who I am as a person, and I was particularly happy about that.
You did a whole lot of soul searching to come up with that answer. So kudos to you. Who else would like to share why Judge was the best school for them? Miss Louisa, take it away.
So I think a lot of my answers kind of echo Daisy's. I will reiterate too that in Europe there's a lot of business schools that are just that, right? Just business schools. So for me, it was also very important to be surrounded by a diversity of disciplines. And I think the college system in Cambridge allows us to really mix with people who are studying whatever it is, undergrads and postgrads. And, it's another layer of education, just meeting people from all over the world. I think diversity is something that Cambridge also really champions. And I mean, just look at the group that you have here. We're all from different places. And that's something that I was really conscious too about. And I think finally, I'm on the older side of the cohort. I'm 33. And I do have a decade of experience in the professional world. So I wanted a 1 year to just to sort of quicken my arrival back to the business world. So yeah, and the last thing, which is a little bit trivial, I wanted a sort of campus life that would allow me to bring my beautiful golden retriever that I'm obsessed with, and have him be kind of part of the Cambridge community, and also just kind of be in a space that he wouldn't be alone a whole lot of the time. So
what's his name?
Houston. No, it's Houston, like the street in New York. Jack would know, named in honor of my time there. So yeah, he's adorable, and he'll be joining us.
Oh, well, Louisa, that is awesome. By the way, this may be the dehydration talking. You don't look a day over 23.
No, Sneha, you and I will call the dog.
Will get you anywhere.
Right? So Sneha, let's hear your rationale. Let's hear why you decided UK over US, because frankly, as a stalker, I would have bet $1,000 the fact that you would have been in the US. So yeah. I feel safe that I'm over here. I'm very fortunate, but let's hear why Judge was your pick.
Okay, I think I've covered a lot about it, but to reiterate my most important 3 points, I think I was very true to the school, as I already mentioned, and it resonated with what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be. Second, beautiful campus, and I wanted to be in a setting where it is not just a concrete building or a city that I'm just walking into. And third, I wanted a good network of people, and as I already told, I was meeting these amazing people. And did I have the same experience with other schools? Maybe, but not as much as what I have right now. So yeah.
3 concise ones. Jack, you don't need to voice your opinion if you don't want to.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I can probably make it pretty short. So I think it depends where in the process. That's like why I would choose Cambridge. So in the beginning, it was a lot of the things that everyone's already echoed. So it was the 1 year program, going over to the UK and, being saturated in the Europe market, and also the focus on tech. I remember Sneha mentioned this at the way beginning. So Cambridge is within Silicon Fen, a ton of tech firms, startups, PE, VC. So that was really big with me being in tech. And those were like the preliminary reasons. I would say once I had narrowed it down to Oxford and Cambridge, the whole idea of tech probably being a bit more prominent on the Cambridge side as opposed to the Oxford side was big. But the other big thing was a scholarship. So I got a scholarship for Cambridge, and that was the ending deciding factor.
Good for you, buddy. I want to now hear this is a more unorthodox one, but it's actually Sneha brought up yesterday. And to be honest, it really was an interesting question when we talked about it. And I feel it could help a lot of our students here, which is, what were some of the struggles you had post your acceptance? So you've accepted the school, you're going there. It's almost like you get out of that honeymoon phase of, yes, I'm going to school. And all of a sudden it becomes, oh, I'm going to school. And so since we talked about this previously, maybe you want to lead off and talk about maybe some of the struggles that you had once you realized what was going on.
Yes. I think the first thing again started off with even accepting the school and sending the acceptance, because you had to be 100% sure that you wanted to be there. Because in the back of my head, I knew that, yes, this is where I wanted to be, but putting it down on that email or putting it down on that paper was a little difficult. So that is the first step, really. And then comes the funding, the accommodation, and the visa process and everything that comes after you get accepted. And for all of this, you don't really then find any help. There is no link that you can just go and read, or there is no one person that you can just talk to and who will solve all your problems. It comes with a lot of networking, and then there are your friends who you are making this cohort who are trying to help. And I think, again, I would not stop saying this about how helpful this cohort has been, because we had a Discord channel that we all started talking on, and any question that we had, even if it was about which institution to reach out to for a loan, everyone had answers and options that they could help you out with, and they were open to spend a 30-45 minute call with you to explain what they've gone through and what you can do it yourself as well. So I don't think that is the kind of efforts that people usually want to put in helping in someone else's career. So I think that way this cohort has been super helpful. And even right now, I'm actually going through a lot of issues with my visa process, and I'm frustrated. But I think I have a lot of people who are hearing me out, and Jack was one of those people who I spoke to and shared my rant earlier about how frustrating this journey is. And it sort of gets easy because there are people rooting for you, and they know something will turn out, and you have someone relating to your problems. So I think this is where the entire cohort comes into place. And remotely connecting, I did not think this would ever be possible, but it's just beautiful about the kind of relationships that we all already built.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. You found exactly what you're looking for, a supportive family.
Oh, yeah.
Who wants to go next about maybe some of the struggles that they've had? Jack, you traitorous American. Why don't we hear from you?
Yeah, so I would definitely agree. The visa process is somewhat cumbersome. I would say get ahead of that sooner than later if you're not a citizen or a dual citizen or what have you. The other thing, and this is kind of a double-edged sword because it's an exciting part of the process. It's part of what makes Oxbridge. But I would say the constituent college process was something that I wasn't necessarily all that prepared for. And there's a lot of research out there. There's a lot of information, rather, but it's mostly geared toward undergrads and the process of applying to one of the colleges. And if you don't get accepted, you get pooled. And it's very different for MBAs or potentially postgrads in general, whereby you're sort of provided a spot or guaranteed a spot in one of the colleges, but it's still up to you to work with admissions to select which college and preface and recognize if you meet the criteria for getting in. And then there can be delays associated with getting accepted to a college too. So I think that that's one of those things where if you have the ability, do some potential early research on what you might be interested in, maybe after you get an offer to interview or something. So that way, by the time that you get an offer, you can hit the ground running with that process. But that's very unique to Oxbridge, obviously.
That's why we're talking about it. That's why we're here. Miss Daisy, how about you?
So I think for me, two things were particularly difficult. So first, once you get the acceptance, you're very excited about it. And then they tell you, okay, this is the down payment. And I think maybe it also has to do with the continent that I'm coming from, which is Africa, right? There is an economic disparity, and they're asking you for an amount of money that you've probably never even had in your bank account. And that for me took a while to sort of, say, I'm going to do this, right? Because it's an email that comes and it tells you, bam, this is what is required. You sort of know it, but until you see that sort of figure, it takes a while for it to sink in. So that's the first thing that was quite difficult for me. But having the group and seeing that other people have done it, that is really important. But also it's a bit of a stretch, and I think it's a good challenge. For me, it has been a good challenge to sort of think, how do I come up with all these different things? And the good thing, for me, the same as Jack, I also got a partial scholarship, so that really helped a lot. I think without it, I would have said, okay, that was a good run, but there goes, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is relocation. Relocating is very stressful. I had no idea just how stressful it is. The idea of uprooting yourself and going to a new country, and you're going to meet people that you've never met before in person, in as much as they're lovely in the group and all that. You don't know the people like in person. And so that means that like you're starting afresh and all that. For me, I went through a lot of emotions to do with that, leaving like my family behind, my loved ones, and starting afresh and all that. Quite frankly, it did take a toll on me, and it took a friend who had already gone to the UK to sort of help me see, okay, you going to the college system is actually really good because it allows you to acclimatize into a new environment with other people who are going through the same thing. So therefore, you're not really alone in the process of, going to a different place. And then the other thing that I think was difficult for me, or that took me a while as well, is the college thing, right? Because there's 31 colleges and you barely know anything about these 31 colleges. And you sort of have to think, where do I want to go? And you're using like very limited amount of information. The admissions actually does try to give you as much information as possible. But then I think just being human, you sort of want to understand, will you enjoy your stay there? Will it be nice? Will it be closer to the school and like all that? And I think we have like an Excel file where we can actually see all these different things about the colleges, which I've found very useful. But before that, it was a bit of like a gray area. So because you're moving and you want to know, is the place that I'm going to stay going to be good enough for me? So that was challenging. But for me, the most stressful of the three has been the relocation, because I love my country, Kenya. We have great weather. I love my family. The idea of starting over, like after you're done with your 20s, it's sort of a bit daunting because you've been building something for all these years, and then it's like you're leaving it and going to start afresh elsewhere, and you don't know what job you're going to get. You don't know how the market is like. You don't know how the entire experience will be like. Yeah.
You had a whole lot of reasons there. Wow. But that's a good thing. I mean, you were able to conquer all of that and you're still going to your school.
Yes.
And by the way, yes, weather in England blows. I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Because we have, I think, among the best weather in the world, because I'm from Kenya and we're right at the equator. So which means that we don't have winter and we don't have summer, right? It's like eternal spring or eternal autumn or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, you're going to get all the seasons in London or wherever the heck Cambridge and Oxford are located. I don't care. I don't care about international business schools. If Cambridge or Oxford take issue with this video, at me. Again, facts be damned. I'm thinking it's in London. But either way, Luisa, how about you?
So I am on the minority within our cohort, as I'm going to be living off campus because I'm bringing my dog. So obviously no college is going to accept me with him. But I was very proactive in that sense. I started messaging our Discord chat and kind of seeing if there were other pet parents and just kind of figuring out what was what. And then I got a little frightened about the off-campus situation because we talked to a few alumni and they were saying how hard it is to find accommodation. And this was sort of in May, and I'm kind of, oh my God, how am I going to take my dog? He's also like a giant golden retriever, so it's not like you can hide him anywhere. So I started, I messaged the LinkedIn group from the current cohort and asked if there were any pet parents. There were, and they sent me to an amazing realtor who then, I got in touch. I sent her pictures of my dog, and simultaneously I was also speaking to one of our classmates who owns a cat, and he was saying like I'm freaking out too. And it seems like we're going to have a better deal if we end up rooming together. So we were able to secure a house without getting our visa or prior to getting our visa. And well, one that would accept a cat and a dog. And so once that was done, I think I was able to breathe a little bit easier. Additionally, I mean, I think I would have still lived off campus if I wasn't bringing Houston, just because I've done the dorm life for a long time, and I'm at a point where I really appreciate having my own space and kind of making that sort of my safe haven. So that was one thing. And a little bit to what Daisy's saying, I think the relocation for me is stressful as well, not in the sense of living abroad or leaving my family. Like, I love them, but I've been very confined to them throughout the past 3 years because of the pandemic. So I'm pretty ready to have my own space again. But there's a couple of things that we're currently experiencing that are giving me a little bit of anxiety, which are the current luggage situation, particularly in Heathrow, is so messy. And even if you're shipping things, it's just kind of a crazy, chaotic moment. So that's one thing that I'm not even sure how to handle. I really don't want to lose any of my luggage, and so that's that. And then it turns out because of the same issues with airports and airlines, pet cargo is also kind of on hold for now, and it may get better towards the end of the summer, but that may mean that I have to leave my dog with my parents, which is fine. He loves them, for a couple of months until I can get him there. So we're kind of in that limbo right now, and I do think it kind of is unfortunate that the whole flying system is kind of down, but there's nothing we can really do about that, but hope for the best and probably put some air tags on our luggage so that at least we know where they are.
All very real, all very different problems, but
Yeah.
again, diverse group, and we have diverse problems. Now, diversity, again, another thing that we should be focusing on here. We are at the 2-hour mark, so I'm going to consolidate some of these questions. I'm going to ask some of the questions, and I'm going to sort of hit the wrap-up phase here, which is, yes, we've been talking for 2 hours, and some of you watching are probably thinking, how on earth did they not cover everything possible? I have to ask anyways. Is there anything we didn't get to that you want to cover? Maybe anything that, looking back on your past self, I know we've talked a little bit about that, if you could go back in time and change something, you would. Anything specific that you experienced throughout the process that you feel users applying this year should know? Anything is on the table for this last question. So I am opening up to you guys. Sneha, I'm sorry. I'm used to calling people Neha. I'm so sorry. Because I got your name wrong, and because you're unmuted, and because you look like you want to jump through the screen, why don't you go first?
No, I don't think we missed anything, and there are no last points. But I think, as I already mentioned, we're open to connect. I think because we're already on LinkedIn, there are a lot of people already reaching out to us with questions and to help them out through this process. So I think we're all more than open to have those conversations. We're super busy. We know we have a lot of things to figure out ourselves, but I think at the end of the day, we still want to extend as much as support that we all could. So I think, that's about it from my end.
Wonderful. Miss Daisy, how about you?
If I was to say something to someone who's thinking about applying, is to think very carefully about their values and what they want in the near future. They don't even need to have like a 10-year plan. It can be like, what do you want in the next 3 to 5 years? Because the world is changing a lot. But if you have your values well defined, it's very easy to find the school that is right for you. and it's also easy to understand which direction you ought to go. It's not so much about like the ranking or like the salary or like all these different things. It's like, what are your values and where do you want to go? That is like a good compass that can lead you to your North Star much faster than listening to like different parameters laid out by different people.
Thank you for that added input. Miss Louisa, how about you?
I would say don't let yourself get sort of bogged down or kind of focus only on the rankings. I think, yes, that may be important to some people, and that's totally fine. But some of them are just, at the end of the day, you need to find the school that's right for you, right for the experience that you want right now. And regardless, you're gonna end up with a great education at a great place. So it doesn't matter if it's number 1, number 20, number 50, but just go with what's best for you.
Boy, we probably should have ended with you on the positive high note. Jack, pressure's on you now to end this thing on
a negative
all
note.
Smiles, all happy. You're going to do fine no matter where you go. Well, let's hear it.
Yeah, I actually do think that that's true. I would echo what Louisa said. Like, rankings really don't matter, especially when you're wrapping up and you're entering back into the workforce. Like, let's say that there was a niche type of program, but the overall business school was not ranked all that high. I would absolutely go there over Cambridge any day. And keep in mind too, a 1-year program is going to be weighed quite differently than a lot of the schools that are top 10 and they're 2 years, right? So it really doesn't matter. It's kind of what you make of it once you get there. The one other piece of advice I would give, though, I don't know that it's necessarily all that important or like it was super cumbersome and I wish I had this advice. It was more that I didn't know going into the process, but start the process of letters of recommendation early, because that is one thing that is very much out of your control. So if you are lucky enough to be someone like Louisa, where you had this really good relationship with, I think you said her name was Lauren, and Lauren obviously knows a lot about Louisa and probably just needs like a reference of maybe some numerical things to talk about, but knows her well enough to be able to elaborate. I got lucky with that too, but that's not to say that you're not coming from like a really big organization, or maybe I'm making some guesses here, but Daisy, maybe you don't even have a manager directly, right? Because you're very much taking on things that are self-intuitive. So maybe at that point, it's like, okay, well, who do I want to ask? I don't want to put words in your mouth, Daisy, but I think that is one of those things, because it's out of your control, start it earlier than later and almost provide the referrer with more information than you think that they would need, because you want to make it as easy as possible for them so that it actually provides value to your application.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Funny, we have actually more people joining now. Our numbers have sort of dipped and now they're going back up. I think people are like, what has been going on for over 2 hours that they're still talking? Are they even still alive? Do they know the camera's on? Do they know they're live? The answer is yes and yes, and nobody's dead, at least yet. Last trivia question. I didn't get to it. So for 25 points, just so we can finally tally this, Jake Peralta is a fictional character on what TV show?
I'm out.
Jack doesn't know. Wait, come on, guys. Sneha, Louisa.
Louisa, I try to search on Google.
No, cheater! I'm making you negative. Minus 25 points for Sneha. The answer.
Brooklyn
Nine-Nine. Jack, you're from New York.
I know. I'm in Brooklyn right now too. That sucks.
All right.
Very bad, Jack.
Yeah.
Final points. Jack at 150. You are our winner. Daisy had 50 points. Sneha had negative 25 points, which means Daisy had 0. So technically, Daisy, you did not finish in last. Sneha did.
No.
With that said,
I didn't. I got 0.
You got 0, but that's okay. 0 is better than negative. Sneha.
Okay, minus 25.
I mean, I will fully admit this was a useless competition, strictly for the laughs and the jokes. But again, we are at the 10-minute mark. Oh my God. Everyone who has watched for the entirety, if you stood here and watched just because you wanted to, you're freaks, you're superhumans. I don't know why you did it. I don't know why you want to punish yourself, but you did. The leap. So we are not going to take questions because, again, we are way over time. Beyond insane. How would you recommend they connect with all of you? Would you say through LinkedIn?
LinkedIn.
And would you mind posting? How do I get rid of this? Would you mind posting your LinkedIn's to the comment section of this video once we wrap up?
Sure. Yeah.
Only if you're comfortable.
Yes.
None of you cackling hyenas are getting my LinkedIn.
We'll find you, self-elected prime minister.
Sneha already has my LinkedIn. That's a scary part. So, I'm actually not even kidding. I actually do think you know my LinkedIn. So if you guys want to connect, please connect with them over LinkedIn. To our panelists, thank you so much. This was more than any of you bargained for. So I really appreciate that you hung in there. All of you probably really want to stand up and go have lives outside of this. So from GMAT Club, from myself, thank you so much for joining us here on a Saturday.
You're
and
welcome.
we hope to see you guys soon.
Thank you, Evan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye.